Thanks, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet of Portsmouth City Council. I'm Gerald Van Jackson, I'm leader of the council, and welcome to this virtual meeting. Members of the public are invited to view this meeting, and there's been an opportunity for written representations to be submitted. We're meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. For the purposes of this meeting, the City Solicitor has advised that pursuant to Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, this meeting will be run by reference to the model standing orders as set out in the Local Authorities Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority Meetings Regulation 2020, number 392. Members, please keep your cameras on through the meeting and only turn your microphones on when speaking. Officer colleagues, if you can keep both cameras and mics off until your section of the meeting arrives. I'll now ask Cabinet members to introduce themselves, and let me go back into that. So, Steve Pitt.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Steve Pitt, Deputy Leader of the Council, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Matthew Whittington, do I see a Pompey sign behind you?
No, it's celebrating the mighty St Helens winning the Super League on Friday in dramatic fashion. Matthew Whittington, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Okay, Lynn, lovely to see Christmas decorations, Lynn.
Yes, all my Christmas decorations are up, yes. To cheer us all up. Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you very much indeed. Chris Atwell.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Communities and Central Services.
Dave Ashmore.
Dave Ashmore, Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change.
Darren Sanders.
I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Susie Horton.
Good afternoon. Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
I know Hugh Mason is having problems getting in. Technology is keeping him out, so I'm sure he'll join us when the technology arrives. Lee, are you here?
Indeed. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Lentil. See me, hear me. Anyway, yes, you can hear me, I guess.
Yes.
Good.
Would you like to say who you are and what your job is, Lee?
Yeah, I am the Cabinet Member for Community Safety. Thank you, Leader.
Okay. Claire, I see you've joined us as well. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Oh, blimey, sorry, I was just stuck in my throat. Hello, I'm Councillor Claire UD, and I'm just here to watch.
Okay. It's nice to see you, as always. Colleagues, with the officer call, can we introduce yourselves when we get to your item, if that's okay? In terms of apologies for absence, I think is there any other member of the Cabinet I haven't got to? I don't think so. No. So I think we need to record that Hugh Mason is being kept out of the meeting by the technology, and he'll join as soon as he can. Any declarations of interest from councillors that we need to record? No? Okay. Colleagues, minutes of the meeting on the 3rd of November. Colleagues, are you happy with these minutes? Thank you very much. Approval for the Council's Test Trace Support Payment Discretionary Scheme. Mr. Ward, are you here to introduce that?
That's one of mine, Gerald. It's
Natasha. Oh, sorry, Natasha. My apologies. Far away.
Thank you, Gerald. Natasha Edmonds, Director of Corporate Services. This is the Council's criteria for awarding discretionary test and trace support payments from the discretionary fund, and it was a decision that was, so this is for noting, that was signed off under the Standing Order 58 arrangements, and it relates to test and trace support payments.
Great. Okay, colleagues, any comments on this, or are we happy with this? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Next one, Portsmouth International Port Carbon Reduction Strategy. Mike Sellers, welcome.
Good afternoon, Leader. Good afternoon, Cabinet. Hope you can hear me okay. We've had a little bit of an issue ourselves with our Wi-Fi, but we can see you, so hopefully you can see us.
Yes, very much.
I'm Mike Sellers. I'm the Port Director for Portsmouth International Port. I've also got with me Jerry Clark, who has been our project manager through the development of our carbon strategy and also our quality strategy, and is my technical expert. So if you start to ask me too much in the way of complicated questions, I can pass them on to Jerry. Just very briefly, in terms of the report, this is twofold. Firstly, to advise the Cabinet in terms of the work that the ports are doing with our carbon reduction plan, but also we come under the Department for Transport, and we handle over 1 million tonnes of cargo a year, and because of that, we have it's purely voluntary, but we have worked on a air quality strategy that we want to submit to the Department for Transport by the end of this year. So we're seeking your approval for us to put forward our plans under our strategy. At this stage, I'll just hand over to Jerry, who can talk you through some of the live projects that we're working on and some of the plans under our action plan.
Yeah, good afternoon, Leader, Council. We're working on all of our projects, mainly on the basis of grant, reducing carbon, and we're talking about mitigation of what we're producing as well as reduction. You'll see between 2018 and 2019 a reduction in the amount of electricity we're using both in Portico and over here as a result of our solar arrays. We have achieved a £100,000 grant for a large storage battery and energy storage system, which will store our renewable electricity and redistribute it as we need it. That uses machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's being worked on in the conjunction of Swan Barton and Marine South East local companies. In coordination with that, Mike put in 100,000, or you put in 100,000 to convert our diesel light vehicles to electric light vehicles around the port so that we produce less carbon from our own use of these vehicles. So these things are coordinating and coming together. Portico have started using what's called Shell GTL, gas to liquid fuel, which means it's a replacement for diesel and produces less carbon when it's used. We're looking at using the same fuel over here in the ferry port. It comes down to the amounts we can purchase. We're thinking of piggybacking on Portico, but again, that will see a reduction in our carbon emissions. The Galicia is due in the day after tomorrow to start a new run. She's an economy ferry, if you like, that burns less fuel than the one she's replacing. So that is landing on link span number 4, which itself was a new link span. In order to get Brittany Ferries to come here, we had to put in the latest equipment. That link span actually benefits from £500,000 worth of grant that was put in to make sure it was more sustainable, with soft start electric motors, longer life steel, LED lighting, and other bits and pieces. At the same time as we've done that, we've done something that I'm not sure any port in the UK has yet done, and you've approved, which is putting in air quality monitors around the port. We've put up 3, the last 2 are still to go up. This has been paid for 60% from grants from a previous grant we'd achieved. Those figures are starting to come in already, and without being formal about it, it puts our particulate matter emissions well below the threshold rate for any kind of concern. Reports will come into that later when we've actually got all 5 up and they're commissioned. Other work continues around the port, trying to reduce our carbon emissions, particularly getting hold of UK government grants. We're working very closely with Portsmouth University, Southampton Solent University, on things as diverse as reducing marine noise and its effect on marine ecology, and also putting around the port. You call them green walls, but we're looking at removing the aesthetic of using green walls, because that's just a nice word for filtering out fine particles. And we're looking at putting great big industrial air filters at the port boundary as a proof of concept to show that this might actually be better than just trying to put up a hedge that looks nice. That's a short summary, Leader.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And I think our aspiration to be the first carbon neutral port in the country is a really good aspiration, and I'm very proud that that's what we're doing. One of the other things in the report that hadn't touched on yet is wind turbines, and my understanding is the port had submitted a planning application to be able to put in wind turbines, and that will be coming to colleagues on the planning committee at some point over the next few months. So I think this has been a really good piece of work. It's very good to see not only the port being successful, but also trying to make sure that we do become the first carbon neutral port in the country. Colleagues, any questions?
No questions, but I can give a comment.
Yes, of course you can, Dave. Leap in.
Yeah, because there's lots of brilliant things going on at the port. You know, unlike a lot of local authorities that have declared a climate emergency, we're uniquely an island city and a naval city. So we've got those things to look at how we can mitigate on and improve on. And the port have been very, very committed to being on the Climate Action Board there, and some great actions have been coming forward from that. So my thanks to the work that has been going on there. Obviously, shipping is cleaner than flying, but it brings its own challenges. So it's, you know, great to see what you've been doing. It's great to see that you've been stuck in there, and it's great to see you haven't gone for easy options there. You've gone for something very difficult by declaring you want to be the first, net carbon neutral port, etc. So yeah, absolutely all power to you, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Instag.
Yes, I just want to congratulate Mike and his team for such fantastic work, because it really is leading work on air clearing air pollution. So congratulations, well done to everybody. It's so forward thinking, it's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mum.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, colleagues, I haven't got anybody else indicating. Is everybody happy with this report? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, my colleagues at the port, for everything you're doing. It was interesting to be sent on a course, Mike, yesterday about pilotage, and all I needed to know about safe pilotage. It was eye-opening.
Good.
And it was interesting to bump into the former Second Sea Lord while we were there.
Yes. We need to get you on one of the commercial ships with one of the pilots, just to bring one in then.
Yeah, I think we'll think about that in the summer, but certainly not in the winter. Anyway, let's move on quickly before I get pulled into doing something. Okay, item 6 is the Portsmouth Mental Health Alliance. Jeff, I understand you're here to introduce this, and welcome, and thank you very much for coming. Do you want to? The floor is yours if you want to say who you are and just to walk us through this.
Leader, just sorry to intervene, but I believe Gordon Mavuti, who's also presenting on this, is probably not yet with us, so we might need to move further down the agenda and come back to it.
Jeff, is that Jeff? What's your? I thought it was you on your own, but is it both of you? Hello.
I think Jeff's presenting on the contaminated land strategy, Leader.
Oh, okay, all right. In which case, my apologies. All right, let's leave that for the bit then. Treasury Management Mid-Year Review. Chris.
Thank you, Leader. Chris Ward, Director of Finance. This report updates you on the half-year position of the Council in relation to its Treasury Management activities. So it advises you where the Council is in relation to its Treasury Management policy and the Treasury Management indicators, both of which were set at the Council meeting in March 2017. Pleased to report for the first half year that the Council has complied with both. There's no decisions required on this report. It's an information report. It does go on to full Council only, as is best practice, but happy to take any questions that the Cabinet may have.
Okay, colleagues, any questions? Chris Atwell.
Just to thank you, Chris, for the report. The executive summary does its job rather well. It sets out that we are where we are, and we can't expect our returns to change while interest rates are quite so low. Thank you very much. We're going to be awful lot of noise.
Okay. Chris, we lost you a bit then. Have you finished?
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Okay. Anybody else? No, thank you very much, Mr. Ward. Let's move on to item 8, update on supporting rough sleepers and hidden homelessness. James, I think I can see you here.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. We've also got Paul Fielding on the call, and if I can invite Paul to introduce the report to you. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, Paul Fielding, Assistant Director for Housing. So this information report is to provide the Cabinet with an update on our successful bid for allocation to the MHCLG's Next Steps Accommodation Programme funding, and how we've used it and how we plan to use long-term funding going forward. So your Cabinet will remember that report was brought back in July of this year, titled Rough Sleeping, Supporting Rough Sleeping and Hidden Homelessness. And that report outlined how we had dealt with rough sleeping previously and how we were dealing with it through COVID, and our plans, our interim and long-term plans going forward. And part of that report placed with myself and the 151 officer the requirement to submit a bid to the Next Steps programme funding to obtain emergency support for the emergency funding, interim and long-term funding. And we submitted that bid back in August, and this is the update on that. And just to say that how we've kept people updated, so 3.5 of the report identifies that there have been several ways that we've been keeping members updated, as well as the city's Street Homelessness Partnership Board, which is a multi-agency board from people from across the city who help us to take issues with rough sleeping forward. So section 4 outlines that we bid for interim funding, so that was funding to get us through to the end of the financial year, and we've been successful with our funding and gained just over £1.5 million, and that's been spent on obtaining accommodation. So we've obtained accommodation on St Michael's Road and Elm Grove, where people have been able to have a place that they can settle and get support while they prepare to move on to long-term accommodation. And the operation has gone well. Service users have somewhere stable to use and settle while they prepare to move on, and the number of issues we've had reported are low. And that funding runs through, as I say, to the end of the financial year. We also bid for long-term funding, so there was capital funding, and we bid for just over £2 million. And at this stage, subject to final verification and confirmation, we believe that we've been successful in receiving funding. And also we bid just over £2.4 million for the support for that capital funding, and again, subject to verification, we're hoping to be successful in obtaining funding there. With the interim funding, we leased, as I say, the 3 properties, and part of the lease discussions with those owners, there were confidential discussions regarding possible purchase of those properties, and they were subject to a non-disclosure agreement until early November. But we've now out of that, and we're able to say that we are in discussions with the owner of those properties to use, if we are successful with the capital funding, to use that capital funding to aim to purchase those properties. And we would need to submit for planning permission, put in the planning applications to make that possible to use those properties. And that will be going forward. That's outlined within the report, and we're hoping that the planning application will go to planning committee early in 2021. So in summary, The spending this funding by the end of the financial year will prove challenging. It's a challenging timescale, and the housing neighbourhoods, the building services and regeneration directorates are working towards that. And MHCLG and Home England will be monitoring how we deliver against that funding. And we plan to bring an update back to Cabinet in February, March. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to all the team who've worked so hard over the year to make sure that as many people as possible are housed and protected during this very difficult time. Darren Saunders, I see you putting your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Gerald. And again, thanks to everyone who's been involved in delivering something which is frankly nothing short of sensational. If you'd have said at the start of the year that we would be able to house 200 rough sleepers and sofa surfers, no one would have believed you. If you'd have said at the start of the year that we'd be able to provide safe and secure accommodation for the next several years for several of the city's most vulnerable people, no one would have believed you. But that is a fact, and that is there now. And people's lives are being changed, and people's lives will be changed as a result of the work that we have done together as a city, as a council, as an administration, as a partnership board, as council officers. There's also extra funding which was announced last week by the Chancellor of the Exchequer for the 21-22 financial year, and I know the team is also in discussions with the government around that as well. And I think that the amount of money we've been allocated is a vote of confidence in the work that we're doing. I wanted to focus on one particular thing, which is the third building, which is quite new. That's because we want to do something that has been quite rare throughout this whole pandemic, which is plan for the future, rather than worry about now. We realise that at the moment, with 2 buildings, we could probably cope with the numbers of people that we have at the moment. But we're very conscious that unemployment will go up as once the restrictions are lifted. We're conscious that evictions will go up once these restrictions are lifted. And so what we're wanting to do is to have an insurance policy so that if people are forced to sleep on the streets as a result of things that are no fault of their own, then we will be able to provide safe and secure accommodation for them and also for people who might be sofa surfing. We don't know if it'll happen, but too often people haven't known things and they've happened in this pandemic. And I'm delighted that the city as a whole has been doing planning to avoid that happening. And that is why the third building is crucial for the future as an insurance policy for people who may well suffer over the next few months, particularly next spring and next summer, rather than just wait for it to turn up and then worry what to do then. Because that harms people. So I'm grateful to colleagues for everything. I'm grateful to the city's support for everything. We want to make the city kinder, fairer and greener once the restrictions are over, and this goes some way towards doing that. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Steve Pitt and Councillor Matthew Whittington. Can I just check, Natasha, have we had any success in being able to get Councillor Hugh Mason into the meeting?
Councillor Hugh Mason is in the meeting. It took me 30 minutes, but I got here.
Excellent, Hugh. Do you have any interest that you would like to declare?
No interests, Gerald Venner Jackson? No.
That's very good. And Hugh, for the record, is Cabinet Member for Planning Policy. Okay, so Councillor Steve Pitt.
Thank you, Leader. Just to echo much of what Darren said, actually, he and I work on the homelessness partnership group together, and apologies for my mutt in the background, the hazard of being at home. So the pressures that we see on our homeless community all year round, every year, being brought into sharp focus this time by the pandemic, but it's also created an amazing opportunity to be able to really get inside the problem and understand the challenges that we face in creating better outcomes for this particular group of people, which are very complex. They're unique in every case, often different vulnerabilities and different problems in colliding together to cause some really serious, obvious, but also underlying issues that each individual faces. And having the opportunity to work closely on a one-to-one basis develop those relationships, build the confidence, often of people who've lost all confidence in everyone and everything, has been an absolutely invaluable outcome of what has otherwise been a very negative year for so many of us. And what the team have done here in building this model with Councillor Sanders and in close consultation with that working group, which I have to say, very importantly, includes a former rough sleeper whose experiences are always invaluable to the rest of us, but it also includes our officers who work around addiction support. And this is really about making sure that what we're not just doing is sticking a roof over people's heads. What we're doing is providing them with possibilities. And it's those possibilities and that potential that's been ripped away from them for so long. And by putting a roof over their head and having that wraparound support, it just means that they've got a better chance of having a more positive future. And the commitment that Paul and Sharon in particular, Sharon George, have shown throughout this process has been absolutely outstanding. The commitment to making sure that we're not just trying to deal with triaging a problem, but we're trying to solve it, has been outstanding. So thank you to them. Thank you to Darren in particular for working so closely with myself, and also Councillor Mason on that board. It's been an inspiring piece of work to be involved with, and we are genuinely changing people's lives, and that's something that this council and particularly its officers should be incredibly proud of. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew Whittington.
Thank you, Gerald, and thanks to Steve and Darren for their comments, and of course the team from Housing who've been working so hard on this. Just to pick up on something that Steve raised, which is about that wraparound support. I think from a public health and wellbeing point of view, having that basis and the mechanism to enable not just addiction support, as has all been mentioned, but general health support and wellbeing support for street homeless people has been utterly invaluable. And really the having this strategy and this plan and being able to get this funding through there is giving us the basis to really be able to engage on that health and wellbeing side with every single one of those rough sleepers who otherwise in the old ways where we had a lot more people living on the streets, it was very difficult to be able to engage with many of them and help and support them with some of their underlying health, addiction issues, other issues. But when I say health, obviously we're meaning not just physical health, but mental health as well. And having that conduit to be able to work together, as Steve has said, the public health team are involved with the working group, and also we put bids for funding in, which we're waiting to hear back from in terms of further homelessness healthcare on top of what we've already had in the last year or so to support these people, and it really is making a difference. But without this basis of the work that the homelessness team, the housing team has done at the council, we would not be in that situation. So I completely endorse the report. I give huge thanks for all the work that has been done. And in the end, this is all about the best possible outcomes for people who are homeless, and looking forward to the future, whereby we are recognising that there are going to be challenges, great challenges, later on in the next year or so. That being proactive about that, as Councillor Sanders has said, because if we're chasing our tail on things, we can't do things properly. And so having this forward plan, having everything ready is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much, everyone. I completely endorse this report.
Okay, colleagues, thank you. I think also they won't say this, but I will. It is helpful to have both Steve Pitt and Hugh Mason on the cabinet, who regularly cook for people who are homeless. I think in Hugh's case, he's been doing it at St Simon's Church for 26 years, and it does help to have people who've got that first-hand knowledge available to as part of the decision-making group. So, colleagues, are you happy with the report and the recommendations here? Okay, thank you very much. indeed. Item 9 then is the contaminated land strategy. Jeff, sorry, I got to the right person, I hope, for the right report. Welcome. Would like a quick introduction to this, although it is a hugely long report.
It is a hugely long report, but its aims and intentions are quite simple, which is to try and clean up and prevent consequential harm occurring from historical pollution. So it's not about looking at development sites, cleaning them up, it's about sites which will cause harm unless we intervene. So it's a statutory duty, and that strategy describes how the council will identify these sites and bring about their remediation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. Councillor Ashmore. David.
There I am. No, just wanted to say thanks, Jeff, for the report there. You know, it's heavy going, as we know, but it's necessary and seems all bases are covered on that. You know, it can be a metaphorical minefield, I should imagine, that particular interest on it. So, you know, it's good to see that any decisions going forward on that will be in conjunction with officers and the leader of the council there. So, thanks. Just want to say thanks for putting it together. Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Councillor Hugh Mason.
Okay. From a planning perspective, this is a very important report because we have 30 disused landfill sites in the city. We have over 10% of our land surface is contaminated in one way or another because it has been landfill or contaminated. And if we're going to meet our housing obligations, if we're going to keep employment in this city, if we're going to keep people safe, we need to deal with these historic sites. And I think this is a very full report, and I think it is commendable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Dr. Councillor Hugh Mason. Colleagues, I'm always scarred by having listened to one of our former councillors say that when he was working breaking Navy ships in the city, they just took the asbestos out and buried it. And things like that did happen in the past, and we now have to make sure that we protect people for the future. Jeff, thank you very much indeed for your report. Colleagues, are you happy for this to go forward? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jeff. Next one, Revenue Budget Monitoring 2021, Chris Ward. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you, Leader.
But not with a tale of great happiness.
But with a good plan.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, still Chris Ward, Director of Finance. This is the half-year report on the overall position for the council's revenue budget, but it does deal with the position in two parts really. So first of all, it sets out what the impact on the council in overall terms of the COVID-19 pandemic is. And again, obviously, it's a forecast and it has a lot of uncertainty associated with it, as you would expect with the pandemic. But it sets out the overall position in relation to that, the financial impact of the pandemic, but then suggests a deficit recovery strategy in order to deal with that. And as a consequence of the uncertainty, includes a level of headroom as well. Secondly, the report also looks at what the overall position for the council is, or the overall forecast position for the council is. So taking into account both the impact of COVID-19, but also any other variations to the budget that are unrelated to COVID-19. So I won't dwell too long, but I think the key points to note in the report are that the COVID-19 impact on the council as a whole, so when I say as a whole, I mean including, for example, not just what we describe as the general fund, but also the housing revenue account, so social housing as well. We have a central forecast of the impact of that, which is a deficit for the council of 6.1 million. Now that's a deficit having taken account of all of the costs, losses of income, potential losses of funding, but offset by all of the support that's been provided by central government. So the net position in terms of our central forecast is around about 6.1 million at this point. On a pessimistic forecast, that could rise to 12.6 million. So you'll see later, I'll speak shortly on the deficit recovery strategy, but the deficit recovery strategy itself is designed to cover that pessimistic situation. So in the event that that occurs, then the council has identified and set aside funding in order to be able to respond to that situation. So the recommendations within the report are for a revised deficit recovery strategy, and that it identifies 11.9 million, which comprises 5 million from the council's contingency, 5 million from the council's what we describe as the MTRS reserve, which is our spend to save reserve, and also 1.9 million pounds worth of deletions from the approved capital programme. In total, that amounts to 11.9 million, and the general fund impact of the pessimistic scenario for COVID is 11.8 million. Obviously, if we include the housing revenue account, it pushes it up by that further 0.7 million pounds. If we now set that aside, so we've described that the council has a plan for the impact of COVID, both in a central and pessimistic scenario. If we set that aside and look at the other aspects of the council's budget, which have been impacted from non-COVID related reasons, the forecast for other elements of the budget is a forecast underspend of £4.1 million. But important to note at this stage, this is the half-year position, and it is just a forecast at this stage. Again, we've got 6 months of the year left. And one final thing to point out is that recommendations 2 and 3, that deals with the revised deficit recovery strategy, and there are elements in there that are reserved for full council decisions. So that's why this report itself is for onward transmission to council. So it's recommendations 2 and 3, which deal with the changes to the capital programme and also the change of use of the MTRS reserve. Those 2 things are reserved for full council. Thanks, Leader. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, colleagues, thanks very much indeed. I think we need to be clear that when the government at the beginning of the COVID crisis said that they would produce the resources for councils to do whatever they needed, the government have not been true to their word. That's why this report is here, which looks that the council from its own resources needs to cover a gap of between 6 and 12 million pounds. Now that's very serious, because that money could have been spent on things in the city that we would want to do: more classrooms, more SEN investment into clean technology, into greening the city, into many other different things, into the arts and the culture, and making sure that the seafront, when it's rebuilt, is absolutely wonderful. But because the government have failed to keep to their word, we're having to dig into our reserves to be able to make sure that the council carries on, because the council has to come up with a balanced budget each and every year. So my thanks to colleagues, both councillors and to the council officers, for all they're doing to try to make sure that this works. I do think we need to recognise that the government have let us down very badly, but the council officers have been working incredibly hard to try to make sure that the financial impact on the council is as limited as possible. So I've got Darren Sanders wanting to speak, but can I record my thanks to everybody at the council for working so hard, not just in keeping the finances in a way that means that we can weather this storm, but all the work that they're doing to support the people of the city during the COVID crisis, where the council officers have worked so very, very hard. Councillor Darren Sanders.
Thank you, Gerald. I would echo those comments. I think it's important to play on the safe side, which is what this is doing, and particularly when the last 2 years we've seen Conservative run and Labour run councils going bust. I think playing on the safe side is a very sensible approach. There's one particular loss of income which has emerged over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of points with Mr. Ward about it, and that's around the sponsorship of the Spinnaker Tower, which has been £750,000 to this council over the last 5 years. There's been some discussion I've seen on social media around essentially the council has never been interested, didn't talk to people, nobody didn't talk to people, and has basically somehow thrown that money away. I just wanted to check with Mr. Ward, before the virus occurred, was at least one company interested in sponsoring the tower?
Yes, they were, Councillor Sanders, and all the way up until and all the way into the summer. In actual fact, yes, they were.
Okay, so essentially, it's the virus and the economic impacts of the virus that has meant that amount of income, which will be very welcome, is not there.
That's true. It's the financial challenges faced by many organisations at the moment that have made selling the naming rights of the tower really challenging at this stage.
Particularly to airlines.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ward. Happy to back the proposal, Gerald.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew Willington.
Thank you. And just an aside on that exact point, if you're a keen follower of sports, you will know about a lot of stadiums are sponsored, and it's interesting, having seen over the course of the pandemic the amount of stadium deals that have stopped, and even some of the biggest teams in the world, in some of the biggest sports in the world, and we're talking about very high revenue sports like American football, like association football and others, where teams that have had extraordinarily lucrative sponsorship deals for their stadiums have completely failed to find sponsorship, because even some of those very biggest companies who want to be associated with extremely successful sporting teams will not put the money forward, because at the moment their corporate priorities are to effectively make sure that they stay afloat, and that they during a lot of what is happening with restructuring. So I thank Chris for his replies, and also I think it's worth putting things in that wider context, because we are not alone in struggling to attract sponsorship, because we're in the same boat as some of the most successful and biggest sporting brands in the world.
Okay, Councillor Steve Pitt.
Just a quick one for clarification, Leader. I'm aware that this issue will be revisited, particularly in my direction, at full council next week. So I'd like to just confirm with the Director of Finance, that neither he nor any members of his team who were or other council officers who were having any conversations about renewal of sponsorship, nor any member of the administration is in possession of a crystal ball. Are you aware, Chris, that any crystal balls are owned by any officers at Portsmouth City Council or any members of the administration that would have helped them to predict that the negotiation we were drawing to a conclusion prior to the pandemic could possibly be impacted by a pandemic that nobody knew about?
Thanks, Councillor Pitt. There are certainly no crystal balls, but I'm often asked to look to find one.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, are you happy with Chris's report and send this on to council? Thank you very much indeed. Next item is clean air zones exemption, sunset periods and hours of operation. Hayley, welcome.
Thanks, Leader. Hi all. I'm Hayley. I'm the Air Quality Lead for Transport. The report today is a follow-on from the report that you took in October. It builds on the consultation responses, and this time looks at sunset periods, which are limited periods that vehicles would have an exemption from paying the CAS charge, and also permanent exemptions. There are different categories put forward in the report based on the vehicles being very difficult and expensive to replace to compliant types, because they're specialist vehicles and they perform specialist functions. So the vehicles that we will be discussing today, wheelchair accessible vehicles, community transport and school transport, emergency service vehicles, and specialist heavy goods vehicles, also non-commercial vintage buses as well. That's probably it. That's the main points in the report.
Thanks very much, Haley. I know there is an issue with one of these, which is about the wheelchair accessible taxis. So what I'm going to suggest we try to do on that, because we need to make sure we make progress on the rest of it, is just change the recommendation to say that because we haven't been able to have a meeting with Portsmouth Disability Forum yet, although I know we're working on that, that section, we defer, but we give authority to Councillor Dave Ashmore as the lead cabinet member on climate change, Councillor Lynn Stagg as cabinet member for traffic and transportation, and myself as leader, to finalise that one when we've been able to meet with the Portsmouth Disability Forum. But then that doesn't hold the rest of these up. So, colleagues, that would be the amendment that I would make to the recommendations. Councillor Dave Ashmore, you've indicated you want to come in.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, we've been clear from the start of this, haven't we, that we didn't want the whole burden of a clean air zone to affect those who can least afford it, and that includes vulnerable residents and people who have disabilities. So I think it's sensible that we go forward and speak to people that would affect around the city. So the other exceptions that are on there are things like special vehicles, or I can think like cranes if they needed to be transported to go and build things, or if people wanted to book a celebration with a vintage bus, for etc., because those things don't use the roads regularly. So, they're not the main problem of it. So, same with emergency vehicles there. Although we do support the emergency services that are upgrading their vehicles to be compliant. ASAP, of course, we support that. The main problem, whether it be in the two roads near the city centre the government's applying the clean air zone to, or whether it be the rest of the city, which we as a Liberal Democrat administration is worried about, the main problem is too many cars, and the clean air zone, as we've said many times before, doesn't affect any private cars. Won't remove one of them, won't affect any of them. So, in conjunction with the other policies this council is rolling out, such as the retrofitting of buses, such as using money to try and improve cycling, such as supporting play streets, walk to school campaign, such as looking at low traffic neighbourhoods, looking at improving bus connectivity through the city and the surrounding areas, and the greening strategies we've got. Those things will see alternatives to car use, as well as cleaning the air for everyone. So really, it's just a thanks to officers for their time on this. It's been an immense amount of work in a relatively short space of time, and also for members for supporting the measures leading to a cleaner and greener city. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I don't have anybody else who's indicated they want to speak. With the one amendment that I've made to the recommendations, are colleagues happy for us to proceed? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Hayley. Gordon Mavuti has joined us in the nick of time. So Gordon, welcome. We've been through the rest of the agenda, so if we could come back to you now for the Mental Health Alliance, and just to introduce the report.
Thank you.
And tell us, Gordon, who you are.
Thank you. So my name is Gordon Mavuti. I am the Director of Partnerships for Soul and NHS Trust. But I also have a role as the SRO for the Mental Health Community Framework Programme that's across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And I also work into the Isle of Wight itself as part of a strategic partnership that we've got with them. In this context, I am co-chair of the Portsmouth Mental Health Alliance, which I've been working with the local authority through Fiona Wright, who's left now, but also Portsmouth, CCG, amongst many other partners in the city.
Okay, thank you very much. Nice to see you. Do you want to say a couple of words about the report, just to introduce this? And I'm sure Matthew will then want to say a few words as well.
Yes, of course. I mean, I don't know. I had a just a very 4 or 5 page slide deck version of the report to take you through. If that might.
Now, the technology may defeat me. It may defeat you, but give it a fling.
Right. I'm going to have a go. Right, so let me have a look. Just give me a second.
That's right, no, don't worry.
There we go. Got it. It should come up shortly.
Yeah, we are.
Can people see that? Right,
yeah.
Brilliant. So, so we started this alliance earlier in the year, just pretty much at the height of COVID-19, on the recognition that we were anticipating nationally and obviously locally a significant impact on people's mental health of COVID-19. And I think that slide there just reflects the sort of life course impact of this, straight from preterm right to old age, and also recognizing the fact that we have significant amounts of loss associated with COVID-19, not just people losing loved ones, but loss of employment, loss of connections, loss of social networks, and loss of structure. And so for us, putting something together within the city to take a proactive approach to that was absolutely imperative. That slide just gives a very clear outset, 1-page summary of what the Alliance is about. We were very clear from the start that we wanted to draw from all of the sectors in the city, bring people from different backgrounds, businesses, statutory, non-stat, voluntary sector, and since we started, we've had people joining us that weren't in the Alliance, and that's still happening now as we continue the work that we are doing. Just a quick slide on the some of the work that we're doing. We've structured our work into those key work streams that you see over there. Debt and financial issues, being connected to the impact, the economic impact of COVID-19 and what that will do to people's mental health. A lot of excellent work at the moment going on with the Citizens Advice Bureau and other partners in the city. In fact, we've got an event coming up next week that's open to all residents in the city, where we are looking at providing people with some information about how to recognize some of the symptoms associated with mental health in this space and what to do. But for me, I think the game changer here is, can we get to a place where we can start developing mental health friendly policies within any debt collection mechanisms that we have. And I think, the local authority has a big part to play in that, but so do many other organizations as well. Bereavement, again, a key one, people who've lost loved ones, not had the opportunity to say goodbye to many loved ones and the impact that can have. And that's definitely something that, can span quite a long time. You may not see the impact immediately, but certainly will impact on people for many years to come. A lot of research from published by Public Health England actually onto the surveillance report talking about the impact of COVID is actually highlighting young people as a key group that has been affected quite badly through mental health, and that's I think connected very much to just how disruptive lack of structure can be for young people. So we're linked very much with the work that's happening in the children and young people space anyway. That's led through Alison Jeffries and her colleagues, workplaces and support for staff. So we're linked very much with other partners in the city to look at employers in the city, what we can do to support them and the employees that they have. We're actually running a number of workshops early next year, January, February time, where colleagues from Shaping Portsmouth are working together with us to bring all of our big, small, medium-sized employers in the city to start working with them about what they can do, what we can do together to support people in workplaces. Suicide prevention, that's a key theme that really sits across all public health teams across the country. This is a biggie. That the most recent national report on suicide is actually showing that the suicide rates in women in particular are starting to creep up, and that's on a backdrop of the surveillance report showing that women are being disproportionately affected by the impact as well of COVID. So things like suicides are actually things that they take a while to start filtering through, but already we know that people will be very, very much affected by this already. And the final work stream is about co-occurring conditions. So we're really talking about the impact of dual diagnosis here. We know that during certainly the first lockdown, the amount of addiction increased significantly, alcohol abuse increased significantly, and that's not going to have a good impact on anyone's mental health at all. So again, working with our partners in the city to that effect. Everything that we do is underpinned by community engagement. So this is about how do we reach out as far as we can into the communities that we serve to get the greatest impact. We're doing a lot of work on trauma-informed as an approach that embeds everything that we do, and also communications is key, and it's probably one of the areas that I think we need as much help as possible in terms of getting the reach out there and getting the messages that we need to. So final slide. Over the next few months, we obviously have our action plan in place, but we do have a few key things that we want to do as the year draws to a close. But we are planning to undertake a planning exercise, I guess, to call it, or business planning exercise early next year, to really start thinking about how do we take the Alliance to the next level, and build on all the great work that we've done so far. But we recognise that we are quite a long way away from achieving what we set out to do. So overall, I would say it's been a very exciting time for us. It's been good to get people around. The support that Councillor Willington's given us throughout this alliance and other colleagues as well has been very much appreciated. But this is something that will affect everyone at different levels, and it's about, for us, is what can we do today that can make a difference tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. And that's very nice. Matthew, do you want to quickly come in?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we're getting a bit of echo, so if everyone can just mute. Great, thank you. Thank you so much to Gordon for coming along. He has chaired the alliance fantastically with Fiona Wright, who, as he said, Fiona has now left us, and Claire Curry will be taking over from the City Council point of view as the public health leader. She's back from maternity leave, and I know she's already been having discussions with Gordon and Fiona, who's handed over, to make sure that the momentum stays up. I have to say, I think that momentum now is really catching pace. We've got groups, so we've got from the voluntary community sector, obviously from the council, from Solent NHS, from other organisations. Most importantly, we from the very beginning of the alliance, having businesses involved, having education involved has been absolutely critical, because this is about everyone in the city. And though it's been the COVID pandemic has been a catalyst for this taking place, this is addressing issues that have been underlying in the city for a very long time, and this alliance being set up is making a real difference. We had an event a couple of weeks ago, which was chaired by the Lord Mayor, which was specifically for our BAME communities, and looking at how we can make sure that mental health in BAME communities is very highly valued and that we have access to that, because that can often be an area which is really difficult to penetrate in terms of what you might regard as normal processes, but also the fact that we know that BAME communities are more susceptible to COVID, and there's been high rates within that. So it's really important that the debt session will be brilliant when that comes up, and there will be more and more of those as time goes on. The other thing I'd like to do is invite all councillors. We are setting up training sessions on Make Every Contact Count and Connect 5, which are two mental health training programs. I've done them both. One I did as in my job in my hat on as a councillor, and the other I did in my former job as a support worker, and it really helped me understand mental health better, both my own and supporting other people with it as well. And I think it'd be invaluable for every councillor to do, to be able to help themselves, but also help people in the community who they might come across with casework, or just when they're knocking on doors, speaking on the phone to people in the community, or if they're just out and about, because all of us can get involved in supporting people's mental health. So a invitation and information will be going out to all councillors about that, and we're also putting it out to all members of the Health and Wellbeing Board that the Mental Health Alliance sits under as a sub board of that, so it reports in. But as the council's mental health champion, again, I'd just like to thank Gordon and everyone involved in the Mental Health Alliance. It is an invaluable new part of our city and is going from strength to strength. And I really encourage everyone who's interested in mental health to look out for any sessions they're doing, promote when you see things that are there, and do look out for any opportunities for training and any events. And most importantly, please, everyone, look after your own mental health. As I always say to people, if you don't look after your own mental health, you can't look after anyone else. So and that's really one of the core things of the Mental Health Alliance, is that we're here for everyone and can really move forward. So thank you again, Gordon, and everyone involved.
I'm on mute. Thank you very much, Matthew and Gordon. I don't have any other speakers. Colleagues, are you happy to accept the report? Sorry, no, I've now got two more. Sorry, I've got Hugh Mason and Steve Pitt. Sorry, Hugh.
No, I've got my hand up.
Leader, Councillor Hawkins had her hand up for quite some time.
Okay, just hasn't flashed up with me. So, Susie Horton, Hugh Mason, Steve Pitt.
Can I suggest that one of the others goes first, because my mum needs to pick up the phone?
Okay, so let's go back to Hugh Mason then.
Very quickly in 30 seconds, I think the important thing about this report and about the work which is done by this alliance is that it's showing that mental health is linked with every aspect of our lives and is every aspect of our community. So long, for so many years, mental health has been regarded as something which was totally separate from everything else in life. This is now bringing it in, integrating it in all aspects of life, and that, I think, is why this report is so important.
Thank you, Hugh. Councillor Steve Pitt.
It ties in perfectly with what Hugh's just said. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Gordon for his involvement with the Future Together Actions programme that we've got together with Shaping Portsmouth, that myself and the Lord Mayor sit on. We've been very keen to make sure that all of the work streams that we're actively pushing on there, and I think it was at the very first meeting, Gordon, that I said what we don't want is well-being as a separate platform. We need it as something that underpins everything else we're doing. So mental and physical health and well-being all underpinning all of those work streams. And thank you very much for your contributions to that work, which is ongoing and is proving to be incredibly important in helping our business sector and employees in the city moving forward. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Susie Horton.
Apologies about that before. Thank you very much. I'd like to place on record my thanks to Gordon as well. And having heard the longer presentation, it's really exciting work that we're going to be doing. I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't focus on children a bit, especially as when you ask people about what is the biggest issue for young people at the moment, that usually the answer that comes back is mental health issues, particularly with the pandemic. But of course, as I think it was Matthew had said, these issues have been around and growing in seriousness before the pandemic, and so this has kind of crystallised our thoughts on them, and particularly when it comes to children's services in the city, we've got a really good reputation for leading on some of these areas around neurodiversity, for example. We had and also a joint targeted area inspection, which is basically a big inspection with a focus on mental health and with some really positive outcomes around the work that we're doing. And in fact, we are the only city in the whole country to have won subsequent bids, so that every single school and college in our city has access to a mental health support team, which of course is the equivalent of that early help. It doesn't mean to say that there's enough resource there to sort everything out, but it does mean that we're in there early on. So there's some really good work to build on, but this is brilliant in actually elevating that profile. And it just demonstrates really the importance of strategic partnerships. I often use this phrase that says that people don't divide themselves up to fit in nice portfolio budgets. They don't divide themselves up to separate between housing and education and other areas. And actually, it's our responsibility to make sure that we coalesce around them for their needs. And there couldn't be anything sort of less important than mental health. And my final point is just to focus in on the trauma-informed underpinning of this. I cannot emphasise how important that is, but also to highlight the fact that we're really lucky in Portsmouth that we have people placed within the city who are real experts in this. And it goes hand in hand with our restorative aspirations as well. So thank you, Gordon. We know this is just the beginning, but I am absolutely optimistic that we can make a real difference in families' lives. So thank you.
Leader, just to let you know that Claire Curry's with us on the call in case you wanted to add anything.
Okay. Claire, anything we need to add?
No, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Deputy Leader. I just really wanted to say hello, and clearly, as you recognise, this is very much Gordon's work. He's driven it forward with huge passion and vision to date, and I'm very much looking forward to being part of it and taking it all forward with you. So just to reiterate Councillor Winnington's messages around all of our roles in promoting mental health and wellbeing for local residents. It's a huge area of work which is very important, and the training session which I'll liaise with Councillor Winnington in setting out to you all, you're very welcome to attend. I think the session on Connect 5 training is scheduled for the 17th of December, so it's very soon. So just to as a placeholder really for your diaries if you are interested in getting involved in that.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, are you happy to accept the report? Thank you very much indeed. That concludes this meeting of the Cabinet. Thank you very much indeed for attending. Mr. Ward, could you give me a call when this is finished? And then thank you everybody and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.